busy. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, let me run in here while you do the pilot test.
Do you want to use this one?
Yeah, you might as well. No, it's supposed to sound better. You might as well keep practice. That's the tape we use in your office, isn't it?
Huh?
Is that the tape we use in your office?
I think so.
I got like 3 bunk beds.
Okay. Did we have the... Don't...
Did you guys go to church Sunday?
Yes, we did.
I apologize.
It's all right. I don't have those.
Well, did you enjoy the service?
Uh-huh.
Good. Well, I worked Saturday, and then I realized you need to do laundry and do some things around the house because you're going to be gone. So I didn't go to church. And then later on that evening, I thought, oh, the kids were supposed to come to church today. Like, oh my goodness.
It was all right. We knew Ed McNeary.
Oh,
He's
okay.
working on the same project, actually. He's another one of the group's advisors. So.
And I had another young lady call me, Carrie.
That's my girlfriend.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, she didn't tell me that. Anyway, I got to call her back because I got a conflict with the date I gave her. And Carrie called me, and I can't think of
Brandy called. Brandy and Jared. Brandy and Jared.
I don't think that was her name. But the living group. Ann Kramer. She called. Okay, here's what I did. I talked with Gwen Grimes, Word of Life. Remember her that we talked about? Her name, and she is willing to do an interview.
Okay.
I talked with Sam Long, LNG from Antioch Baptist Church, and his number is, he is willing to do an interview. And I believe that Sam is the nephew of Reverend Broadus, that I told you that back in the, I guess, 60s and 70s, he, along with Reverend Williams and a couple of other ministers, were real interested in civil rights and pushed to forward civil rights issues and race relations in Muncie at that during that time.
And what was his name?
Sam Long.
His uncle's name?
Broadus. I think it's, I don't know, I can't remember his first name now, but because we always called him Reverend Broadus. And it's Broaddus, I think. Okay. I talked with Erica Quarles, Quarles. And Erica's number is, wait a minute. Erica's, and you can probably reach her there in the evening. She is a member of St. Mary's Catholic Church. And she's a young lady. You may have seen her around campus. She's working on her master's, I think it is. Okay. And of course, you know Ed McNeary. And his number is, and he is willing to do an interview. And best time to reach him is after 7:30 in the evening. And then I talked with Willie Thomas from Bethel AME. And let me get you his number.
After we get done here, do you want to try to make some calls?
Yeah.
We can just go over to my house or go to your house.
And he said he would be willing to do an interview. And I gave each of these people your names, so that when you call and tell them that you're with the Ball State Project and you're working with Phyllis, that I'm, because I told them that I was working with you guys, and gave them your name. Okay. Willie's is. and he's a member of Bethel. And yeah, Judy didn't call me back. She might be out of town. Miss Kathleen, I didn't talk to her. Oh, I talked to Betty Sloss, Sloss, from True Vine. And that church sits right over here on the corner. When you go out on my porch, you can see the back end of the church.
Okay.
It's right there on the corner of Willard and Grant. And Betty's number is, and she and her daughter are going to talk with you.
Okay.
Because the daughter runs the programs at the church.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are they the pastor Sloss?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's his wife and daughter.
Okay.
Okay. So, but I didn't talk with Mrs. Holcomb yet, and I haven't talked with Mrs. Sweat yet. So, but I think you got enough to...
This might be enough. I mean, this will keep us busy, so...
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because I'll be gone next week, and that'll keep you out of trouble.
Yeah. This is our busy month. We gotta get all of our interviews done in February, and we start writing beginning of March, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Now, what are we going to talk about today?
I didn't tell you this, but I had just a question. From our very, very first interview, I was looking over, well, it wasn't an interview, it was just when we came to talk to you the first time, you were talking about the church picnics.
Mm-hmm.
I just wondered if you could, tell that story again, because we weren't able to tape it. And, go into more detail about what you remember from those church picnics.
Okay. Oh, my gosh. This is back, I guess I was, I don't know, 7, 8, really young. This is probably a good 45 to 50 years ago. And, of course, there weren't as many black churches as there are now, so the churches kind of did more things together. And one of the things that they did was the church picnic, the annual church picnic. And I can remember this one time in particular where the churches got together. It was a Sunday school picnic. And we went to Newcastle State Park there on 3. And at that time, I thought that park was so big. And they had ducks, and they still have ducks even today that you can feed. But I just thought that was just terrific. I mean, just, and it was so much fun riding on the church buses and all that, and it was just a good time, and there was no really distinction between one denomination or another. Schaefer and Union, Bethel, and I think Calvary may have been a part of that as well, in Antioch. Though, because at that time, I'm thinking those were the primary churches, and then there was Maynard's Temple, which was a holiness, or Church of God in Christ, I guess is what they're called now. But back then they were holiness. We call them holiness church, or sanctified churches. So, but that was really fun, and it's just too bad that the churches don't do things like that today. I also can remember baptizing in White River. And when I think about that now, I cringe. 'Cause that water probably had all kind of critters in it. But I can remember, in fact, there may even be some pictures at our church of some of those baptizings.
Was that all churches or just Trinity?
No, I think maybe, because I can remember what time we did it, but it wasn't just us. But I can't remember what the other churches were. If it was Mount Zion or Schaefer or Union Antioch, I can't remember. But I can remember there were other people there that were not from our church.
So you did it on one day,
Mm-hmm. Like one Sunday afternoon, maybe. everyone met down by the riverbank there in all places, Whiteley, where probably the river is absolutely the dirtiest, by virtue of environmentals. And there was that, is it Indiana Bridge or Indiana Steel and Wire? It was some big factory that was just like down the road a piece that dealt with, maybe it was Indiana Steel and Wire. But now I think about the chemicals from that manufacturing plant that probably ran off right into the river, and there we were, a block and a half away getting baptized in it, So, those are just some of the things that I remember about the churches. And now it's different because it's almost like every church has got their own little turf, and there's not a lot of interactions. I think probably the Baptist and maybe the Church of God in Christ, within those the churches within those respective denominations may be a little bit closer than some of the others. I know Trinity is not doesn't interact with other church groups as much as it needs to or ought to. But I think that's because we're the only United Methodists.
Do you guys interact with the AME churches at all?
Very, very little. Now, years ago when Reverend Williams was pastor, of course he's retired now, we did a lot of sharing as far as maybe having other churches in or other ministers in or choirs visiting other churches and doing a concert or a program, things like that. But we haven't done very much of that within Trinity in the last few years. So, and sometimes that leadership comes from who's pastoring. Kind of sets the tone sometimes.
So, this is just a question about Sunday. Reverend Nave, he's the new Pastor Nave. He's new.
He hasn't been there. I think he came in. I think he moved into the parsonage the 1st of September. Let me check my file. He's relatively new, and we're so blessed to have him because we need that energy of youth with the fresh ideas and the vision and all of those kinds of things. And because as you noticed from probably Sunday, the congregation in our church has sunk considerably. And was that him? You gotta go. Where's your coat? Okay. That's my baby son. And the congregational members that are still there, they're becoming older, and we don't have a lot of young people in our church. That's why it's such a blessing to have a young pastor and with a young family, and hopefully we'll draw in younger people. Young people with families and just young people, because she has several children. So
it seemed like there was a lot of hope expressed when people were talking about where Trinity's going. I noticed that people seem to have a lot of hope.
Yeah, well, you always have to have hope. Trinity used to be the church, and then the church split, and Word of Life. I don't know what their particular denomination is. They're not United Methodist, but that was a splinter off of Trinity. And the current pastor there, and probably the vast majority of his membership were once members of Trinity. But the church split, so that hurt us. And then, but we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. There's hope, and I'm just really thrilled and thankful that we have a young person that can look, down the road to the future. I think that's going to make a world of difference. Jermaine, excuse me. Where is Cherub? Is she in the? She's in your bed. Okay.
Something I thought of before you said all the churches have their own turf. I mean, is that within each church have I assume it's just like certain people go to a church, but do certain people from the neighborhood maybe go to the nearest, say, Pentecostal church or the nearest?
No. It's more of, when I say each church has its own turf, it's more like they don't get involved in community issues really like they once did. They don't. During the time of Reverend Bartleson and Reverend Williams and a couple of others, during that era, it didn't matter what denomination you were necessarily. If there was an issue that arose that was pertinent to the community, the denominational lines disappeared. And they worked together in a leadership role, leading their congregations to address whatever issue that was.
Kind of like the Coalition for Concerned Clergy now, or is that?
Nah, not really. It was
But the
yes and no.
Coalition of Concerned Clergy is like now what they did back then, just without having a coalition. They just did it then.
I think they were more vocal then than the clergy are now, because Reverend Williams and some of those others marched on City Hall. They were far more vocal about issues, and in fact, Reverend Williams he ran for mayor during that time. And you could probably research the Muncie newspapers, the Star, the Press, they're combined now, and find articles that would give you more information about that, him running for mayor on, I think it was the People's Party ticket or something. So the clergy at that time were far more vocal publicly about common issues than I think the clergy are today. And they were more involved in community issues. If something adverse occurred, they were just Johnny on the spot right now. I can remember one of our members who happened to be white during that time, how he and his family came to become members of our church. Started with he was a teacher out at Garfield, which is a predominantly, black school. And he was perceived as being abusive or mistreating some of the young black children. And some of the parents came to Reverend Williams. By golly, he went out there right now, he was on it. And, he talked with the principal, he talked with the teachers, and invited the gentleman to come to our church. And he did, and ended up him and all his family joined. In fact, I was at a meeting last summer No. Yeah, okay, baby. Don't work too hard.
All right.
Okay. And saw him and his son, and they're both ministers. And it was through the mentoring of Reverend Williams that occurred. Because our church back then was very big on education. And several of our membership was encouraged to go to school. And many did and went to Ball State and graduated. And some even went further and obtained even higher degrees. One of our members, Mrs. Conley, that's the Vivian Conley Library is named after. Mm-hmm. She was a member of our church. And at one time, it was she, her daughter, and let's see, it was Stephen, Jeff, and David. Okay, it was Miss Conley and Rita, her daughter, and 3 of Rita's sons were all on campus at the same time. Miss Conley was going, and it was so funny to see her little white hair and her little backpack, and she'd just be going along, you know. But that was one of the things that we were really almost, you're going to school. Mm-hmm. You know, it was just a given. You remember the church, you're going to school. You know, so a lot of our members did go on to school and obtained at least bachelor's and associate's degrees, or some even masters. Mm-hmm. You know, and this was under the mentorship and of Reverend Williams.
Does the church stress education today?
Not to the extent that it did then. Mm-hmm. No. I mean, we had in-house educational programs, as I call them, because we had Black history classes. And many of the things that I learned about Black history and the legacy of my ancestors came through that church and those Black history courses. And we would have films, you know, what we would consider, I guess, today Black films with Dorothy Dandridge and, you know, Eartha Kitt and, you know, people you hardly ever hear about today. And some of those films were not just Black contemporary films for that time, but they were also, I don't know even where they found these films. Some were documentaries, you know, about Black folks. And it was like, ooh, I didn't know Black folks did all that. Because we weren't taught that, you know, in the regular classroom. Right. And so it was just really amazing and an eye-opener. But so we were Reverend Williams stressed education on a number of fronts.
Was this like a formal class? I mean, like, did you have papers and stuff?
We didn't get credit for it. But yeah, we had papers and we had assignments to do. We had to go to the library and do research on certain things. And it was, you know, every Saturday morning at a certain time, and all the kids were expected to be there to learn about themselves.
Back to the church pushing education, was there some kind of fund or something?
No.
Did they ever set up any kind of...
No.
Like, if your family needed help putting you through college, was the...
There was some scholarships available, small, through the United Methodist Church Scholarship Fund for the conference as well. In fact, now there is a scholarship fund that is called the J.C. Williams Scholarship. There's a scholarship named after him because he did stress education so. And there was assistance with financial aid, for example. You know, for the parents of young people that were going to enroll in college. There was those that would help with the filling out of the financial aid papers and those kinds of things.
Sorry, I was kind of skip around a little bit.
That's okay.
The Coalition for Concerned Clergy, we've talked to other people about that. I mean, just we saw their presence at MLK Day.
Mm-hmm.
With your position, like, how active is the Coalition for Concerned Clergy as far as politics today? I mean, what do they do in Muncie?
That's a good question. And I'm sorry I don't have an answer for you. Because they really haven't been very active in any of the broad community issues as pertains to race and equality. They have the event, or sponsor the event on Martin Luther King Day, those activities, the breakfast at Merchants, the activities and workshops for youth and adults at Central, and then you virtually don't hear from them. Oh, and then the church services at night. Mm-hmm. And then they're just basically silent until the next year. And we've had some issues that perhaps they should have gotten involved in. But as far as it comes to pushing issues of race and equality in the community, they are basically silent. Now, on an individual basis, I have worked with different ones on some issues. But they have just not been involved, and I'm involved in a number of committees and activities, programs, and whatnot, that there is an absence of black clergy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the answer for that is. I know that some of the pastors have jobs that may prohibit them from participating in some of the meetings and whatnot. But I have even asked over the years that, I understand that your schedules are busy. But it's okay to send a congregational member to the meeting, and we can connect that way and keep you abreast of what the status is. But even that hasn't happened, so I don't know if there's what the reason is. It's a dilemma that sometimes. Not only frustrates me, but it frustrates others in the community who are out there attending these meetings and voicing our concerns and trying to bring some measure of attention to some of the problems that we have in the community. And it's just not, we're not always heard, because traditionally in the black community, the white power structure has looked to the leadership of the pulpit to speak to some extent for the black community. Mm-hmm. And that was true during the 60s and 70s, or the civil rights era, where daily on television we could see the ministers taking those leadership roles in the marches and in the sit-ins and in the protests and what have you. They were some of the first ones that were sprayed with the water hoses. They were some of our fire hoses. They were some of the first ones that the dogs were sicked on, mm-hmm. Because they were right there at the forefront of the issues of that time. And we don't have that today. Mm-hmm. We don't have that today.
is the coalition an attempt to move back to that direction? I mean, I don't know how long they've
I don't know what the coalition does, to tell you the truth. I have never been to one of their meetings. I've never been invited to speak at one of their meetings. I don't know what they do, to tell you the truth. I really don't. White members, and eye contact with some black ministers. And we formed what we call the combined clergy. And I don't know, we had several ministers there, both black and white, all denominations. And we met for a number of years there on a regular monthly basis and discussed the issues, and we would invite different ones in, maybe if there was something going on in the schools with young people, maybe we would ask that the superintendent of schools come and speak to our group and answer some of our questions. If there was something going on, maybe that was of a concern that involved the police, we would ask that the chief come in and talk with us. You know, we did do those things. We had, I don't know, combined clergy did it. We had no, that was study circles, but that come out of combined clergy too. We had a picnic out to Prairie Creek and invited our families. I got pictures up in my office about that. And there's just a lack of, I don't know if it's apathy or I don't know what it is, but it's frustrating to me sometimes because I think we all can agree that there's strength in numbers. And the voice from the pulpit is an important voice, and it's not always there to be heard.
I was just thinking, but anyway, then maybe people just now, they're like, well, you know, we got our civil rights, everything's cruising along, there's no need. Maybe, I mean, I think that's what's wrong.
We fell into that trap as a black community.
As thinking now we can sit with everyone, now we can ride the bus with everyone, now we can go anywhere we want to go. So we don't really have any problems anymore when that's not really the case. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you said this, it's like the time before, like looking at history like in cycles. Mm-hmm. This is, like right now, we're in a period sort of like
after Reconstruction.
Right.
Where the politics starts to attack the previous gains made under civil rights laws and start reversing the effectiveness of those laws.
Right, because now we think that, as black people, we think that we've come so far when really it's still basically the same. It's just well covered up. It's better covered up now.
It's more sophisticated.
Right.
But it's not gone anywhere. It's just as insidious as it always was. It's just that now we don't hang folks from the old oak tree. We hang them by denying them jobs. We hang them by just like what's going on now with the University of Michigan, dismantling avenues that would allow people of color entry. You see. In fact, I wrote it's on my desk. I wrote a piece, essay, or what have you, for the paper on Sunday, speaking about affirmative action, because the general public buys into what our leadership tells us. And if our leadership, what George W. is doing now, his daddy did in the 90s, same thing. Every time there's an inverse relationship between racism and economics. When the economy slumps, incidences of hate and racism and attacks on civil rights laws goes up. When the economy comes back up, the other one goes down. And the same thing that happened in the 90s with his dad, he's doing now, but only this man here's really got a problem. He's scary. Johnny. Now he's going to dismantle. And I mean, but you know, the problem is the people don't have enough information And those 30-second sound bites don't paint the whole picture. You know, if you would listen to him and listen to some of the rhetoric that's on that 30-second sound bite, you would think that when you go into the workplace, it's black folks everywhere that don't have no sense, no education, and don't know how to figure 2 + 2. And white folks with PhDs is out on the street and in the soup line because these uneducated, illiterate black folks has come in and taken their job because of affirmative action. Think, people. You're a business person. You're in the business to make money. You are not going to hire anyone that can't make money for your business. I mean, that's just, but people don't think. They don't stop and think. They listen to this garbage, and because of the pervasiveness of racism that's so ingrained in our society that we don't even realize it's there. And we act on those feelings that we're not even aware of until it's in your face. It's like, ow! And then the light bulb come on. This group that I met with tonight, earlier this afternoon, Teamwork, is doing some things to address racism in Muncie. And this October we had some people in from the People's Institute to do some training for us. Very intense. It was 2 days, 2 full days. And it was funny to me because the same things that I have been trying to get people locally to understand, all of a sudden they got it. Because it was like right here. And every way you turn, it wasn't know what. And you have to face those things. The institution of racism is in every facet of our lives. And you have to, who benefits? Who benefits? Now, just for example, the jobs, these companies is laying off folks and shutting down, boom, boom, boom. I don't even watch news anymore because every day it's another company folding. Okay. They got to blame it on somebody because they're carrying them jobs out of the country. Okay. And now what happens? Here we go with affirmative action again. No. I have a very excellent article, and I know it's on my desk. Because I was rushing out of there. Oh, the kids are coming, I gotta get on. But next time you're in the office, remind me to give you a copy of this article about if white people will only listen. Something to that effect. That may not be the name of it, but I read it. It was I learned something every time I read some stuff like that, and it helps me to understand a little better the other side, because it's always 2 sides to the issue, and there is so much. One thing that whites don't understand is that blacks have to deal with them every day, and for whites, blacks are invisible.
There's always, it's like there's a time when, like, a black person can never leave the white world, but white people can step out of the black world and go back to their
They don't have to.
They don't have to deal with us.
Look at campus. The same issues that we're dealing with as far as racism on campus today, we dealt with 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Did you hear about the whole, everything that's going on?
With the sit-in and all that? Well, I'm not surprised. Because they don't listen.
Some people in our class are remain key people. And Carla Burke she's in our class. She's the girl who coordinated the missionary pageant. Mm-hmm. And the paper, the Ball State paper, tried to say that they didn't seek out diverse people,
I ain't never sought out, went looking for no blacks to be in the regular pageant.
And then just 2 weeks before, when they had the regular Miss Ball State pageant, wasn't one black girl in that. Nobody questioned that.
Exactly. But see, that's the double standards that whites don't understand. If there was truly inclusiveness, those separate organizations wouldn't be necessary.
Right.
if there was true equality, I wouldn't have no job. You say. So, I mean, look at it from it's there. Whether we want to recognize it or not, it's there. The institution of racism is ingrained so deeply in our society, it would be like an embedded cancer that you try to take out. You'd probably kill the patient. And it might kill the country. But if you don't do something about it, it's going to kill the country anyway. You know. And we don't recognize it. White society doesn't have to recognize it because they don't have to deal with it. Because white society benefits from that. And it's just like this issue with affirmative action. There's been affirmative action all along, but it never became an issue until people of color were given access to it. Give you an example, and this is the example I used in the thing that I got to give to Scott tomorrow for the newspaper. After World War II, they had all the GI Bills passed for school, for housing, and all these little subdivisions started springing up, everywhere. Blacks couldn't get them. There's one right over here, across 12th Street. One of those little subdivisions that was built after the war. I can remember when I was going to Garfield and Benjamin Franklin, you cross 12th Street, that's your ass. Literally. Them white kids would beat us and run us to the park. The park was the dividing line. Park right up here was the dividing line. And if we could make it to the park, we had some help. Okay, because 9th Street started black neighborhoods. And the park separated. Okay? Now, and I digress from World War II. But anyway, the example that I used was with the GI coming home, there was monies available to help them purchase homes in these subdivisions. Mm-hmm. Okay? Blacks were overtly denied, not only by your bankers and your normal lenders, financial lenders, but by the Federal Housing Authority. Now, those people bought those houses, they paid them off, the interest rates were low, and blah, 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 okay? And then they decided to sell off that property. Or they decided they wanted to use that property to purchase as collateral to purchase another piece of property further out. Okay? Then their kids could come into this house. Or if they sold it, there's equity in the house that's passed down to the son or to the daughter. Now, who benefited from that discriminatory act? Blacks never had access to it. They couldn't purchase because they were discriminated against. Okay? Maybe the grandson that is benefiting from that equity never discriminated against anybody, but he still benefited from it. And see, that's a concept that white people find it difficult to understand. It's because you'll hear white people say, but I didn't do it. You're right. But you still benefit from it. You still benefit from the institution of racism. For example, say you two were both male or both females. You had the exact same GPA. You had the exact same number of dollars in your savings account. You had basically the same kind of job and earned the same amount of money. And there was virtually no difference in you guys with the exception of color. And you decide, I think I'm going to go to the bank and see if I can get a little car to hack around in. Or I'm going to go to a lender. Doesn't necessarily have to be a bank. The interest rates for you as a white consumer, chances are going to be lower than interest rates for you as a black consumer. And that's true throughout the industry. Houses, car loans, insurance, and I write about that in this article that hopefully Scott's going to publish Sunday. And we don't think about things like that, you know. And we've tested it. We did a test several years ago at our office on employment. We had 2 interns, one black, one white. Their GPAs were virtually identical, and they were same major. Had taken basically the same classes. They were the same age. They were just identical, basically, except for color. And we sent one little girl out to apply for a job that we dressed them. Well, we didn't dress them, but we had them dressed in identical dress. We called them uniforms. I think it was black skirts and white blouses and low-heel pumps and hose. And sent them out, ads in the paper and other places, for a whole month. Just putting in applications. Almost every place the white girl went, she either was able to get an application and fill it out, and oftentimes was given an interview on the spot. Okay? If not, she received some kind of response, either a call back or a letter or something. The black girl didn't she got nada. Nothing. How do you account for that? They just did a study, was on the news or in the paper, I think last week before last, where one university did a study on names, black-sounding names versus white-sounding names. And the resumes that were submitted with white-sounding names received callbacks or some other kind of response from the prospective employers. However, the names that sounded black received fewer or no response. How do you account for that other than racism? But you see, we don't teach these things to young people in the classroom, and consequently, we continue to foster that institutional racism.
It's funny that you mentioned that sending 2 people out for the same job or what have you. I don't know. When I came here last year or whatever, when I moved out of the dorms last year, actually, me and my friends, we all decided we wanted to be grown and not go home for the summer and just get jobs and live in an apartment, So all summer, all from like April to
August.
from April until like the end of May, or the beginning of May. I guess that's only a month. It had to be earlier than that because it was cold outside still. We went to every place that was hiring and filled applications everywhere, and it was so discouraging because nobody would ever call us back. Mm-mm. And I have good work history. I've held a job ever since I was 16. I had one job in high school, and that's not common for high school age people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in high school, if you don't like your boss, you'll quit and find another flipping burger job.
Mm-hmm.
I had one. I worked at my first job for 3 going on 4 years. I had an on-campus job. I have good references and everything, and I did not understand why I filled out application after application after application, and nobody ever called me back. Ever. And Kohl's had a now hiring sign for 4 months up, and I could never get called back.
This is a picture of my son when he did his internship in Korea, as is that one over there. And there's a picture of this one is the one that was taken prior to him going out. That's Charles Ranger. I can't even say his name. Rangel. Mm-hmm. Who is the black representative for New York. And this is his Korean liaison. And that was taken, I think, before they went. He was one of 10 students in the United States selected to do an internship in Korea that year. And that was on his resume. And he couldn't get a job. He couldn't even get a job flipping burgers.
It's kind of discouraging, and nobody ever.
But nobody
ever thinks about that. You just think, oh well, maybe they weren't hiring. Because you want to be optimistic and not say, well.
But you know, that's the problem with us. We have to call it what it is. As long as we continue as black people, because we have some responsibility too, of putting a dress on stuff and being silent, it's going to continue. If I'm standing on your throat and you don't say ouch, do you think I'm going to get up? Because I don't even know I'm hurting you if you don't do something. And see, our society, the majority of society doesn't realize the pain of racism. And it affects all of us, black and white. And it limits all of us, black and white. Here we are living in a global society, and we can't get along with our brother or sister next door. How ridiculous does that look to the world? You know? And we need to start looking through the eyes of the world instead of the eyes of the United States. Because we're not by any means always right in everything. And that's not a traitorous statement. It may sound like one. It's just the truth. Talk to people. But, you know, if we was right about everything all the time, why ain't they done already bombed Iraq? Saddam Hussein. How come all the other countries, France and Germany and Sweden and all the European, you know, and Australia and New Zealand, why haven't they, you know, go Bush, let's get them?
Because they know.
Because there's something wrong with the picture. Think, people. If our allies are reluctant and are hesitant, why? Why are they not as eager as we? You know, there's got to be a reason. What is it that they know that we don't? You know, what is it our government is not telling us? What's the other side of the story? And poor little Tony Blair from Britain, I feel sorry for him, because they just whooping on him right now. Oh, my goodness. But it's just, I don't know, maybe it's so complex, it's simple for me, I guess. I don't know. It's just, and we're supposed to be a Christian nation, and it for me, it's a simple thing. It's in the Bible, and I take it as truth. Love thy neighbor as thyself. That's all you have to do. And the scripture will tell you that once you do that, you have fulfilled all the laws. And there's no qualifications on neighbor. It does not say if your neighbor is black, or if your neighbor is white, or if your neighbor is tall or short or fat or skinny or old or young. It just says love your neighbor. You know. And then we're the ones that come along, got to put all these descriptives with it. Trying to do God's work, telling him what to do.
It's my perception of it is there's lack of leadership. I mean, if you're talking about African American, Euro-American, Latin American, I mean, it seems like there's a lack of leadership, period, in America, which...
But when it comes to this issue, because everybody's afraid of it. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to discuss it. But, you know, I'm like this. If you got a boogeyman in the closet, let's snatch the door open and maybe we can all choke him, you know, and get rid of it. But as long as we don't even acknowledge that that's the door the boogeyman's behind, you know, and we all tiptoe around, the boogeyman's, he's not going to always stay in the closet. Sometimes he's going to come out like he did during the Civil Rights era, you know. And white society was appalled to see with their own eyes that these big old 200-pound police officers with guns and badges and law enforcement and were putting the fire hose on these little black kids. And you could see it. You could see it, you know, and it's like the camera don't lie. But black people have been saying, for years talking about the abuse and the inequities that they suffered in the South. And it was like, oh well. But when it came across that screen and you could see it, you know, and see those babies crying and see those dogs straining. Dogs bigger than my dog. They were German Shepherds too. But straining to get a at those kids, and then they reach down and undo the leash, let the dogs go, and these folks running and screaming and oh Jesus, help us, Lord. But we don't talk about that. We don't.
Why is there a lack of leadership? I mean, like from my understanding, like in the
because when the civil rights laws passed, everybody, black and white, thought, we passed this now. We're not past it.
Why was, the church was a predominant part of that one in the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. Why, were they were they active prior to that?
I think it came boiled down to the leadership and the sense of the best example I could probably give is Rosa Parks. Mm-hmm. I'm just tired. I'm not taking it no more. And it reaches a point in your life where, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to go through this anymore. I'm willing to die for it. I can't take it no more. You can only strip a person's dignity for so long and to a certain extent. And then whatever you do is cool. And I think it just got to the point that black people were just tired. They were just tired. You have to put forth double the effort. You have to, one thing white society forgets is that black people have an opportunity to observe y'all at it all the time. All the time. And you can go for years and never interact with a black person. But there is no facet of a black person's life that they're always forced to interact with that majority group. Always. Always. I don't care what it is. You're always forced at some point to interact with European Americans. Simple fact. And that's okay. But within that interaction, let me give you an example. This is a true story, but I'm going to have to change the name. Okay? Yeah, turn that tape off. And don't take no American history. A standalone class. It could be an elective. It should be mandatory. Okay? But I'll settle at this point for even an elective. We even need that at the collegiate level as well, because there's not a lot. Now, I never took history classes because that was outside my major, and I figured they was gonna lie anyway. But I never took I never took a lot of history classes, so I don't know what the college textbooks
they just hired
look like.
They've got African American historians, and they just hired an Africanist. But that was like a big battle that took probably about a decade to get through. Mm-hmm. With the administration to hire someone that does African history. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's 2 or 3 years. I mean, within the time I've been in.
I just got ordered some books. They came in yesterday. I took 2 of them home yesterday. About this one is Black Profiles in Courage, a Legacy of African American Achievement. Buffalo Soldiers. It was a long time before I realized that back in the pioneer days that was black cowboys. We used to go to the movies and see Roy Rogers and all the cowboys was white. And then I said, no, I ain't got no black cowboys. Are you crazy? And then as I became more educated, I found out there were black cowboys. There were some black cowboys that were famous black cowboys. Just tell the truth, people. That's all we want.
The churches teach history, don't? I mean, are there any churches?
Our church taught black history classes. It went on for a long time.
Not anymore, though?
Not anymore, because we don't have we don't have enough kids to. I suppose we could, but I think it should be taught at every level, at every opportunity, because and in every school and every church, because it would go a long ways to dispelling some of the myths that we have about each other, and it would give not only African Americans